health. Good afternoon. It's Monday afternoon.
Must be time for a coffee break, or
I think so.
Whatever beverage you wish.
Yes. We were just discussing the merits of scotch or bourbon in your desk drawer.
Well, what we were doing is we were reflecting on some of the elder clinicians in our life, early life, that had something in their lower desk drawer.
Yes. There was some wisdom there. As Dr. Stone said, sometimes things go down better. I can remember even when I was first in practice, one of those physicians occasionally pouring a little something for a patient if it was going to be a hard conversation. So,
well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, when we, since we're going down memory lane, when we moved to a rural community in early 90s, the preterm labor protocols still on the books in that hospital was for IV alcohol as a medication to stop preterm labor.
Yep. When I was first in private practice at both of the hospitals in Alexandria and Arlington that I practiced at, you could order an ounce of medicinal whiskey at bedtime for a patient.
True. And we even in nursing homes frequently when writing nursing home admission orders, that was one of the questions was, were they allowed a couple ounces of red wine or an ounce of a liquor as part of their evening regimen. And so, you know, it's interesting. What are the beverages that soothe us, and how are those tastes emotionally soothing or quieting, or what is the smell or the sight of those beverages and how it connects us to memories and to ourselves? It's one of the things we talk about when we talk about food and connection.
I had an interesting talk with my daughter Trinity Thursday night when we were talking about memories and such like, and memories from childhood. And I was talking about Chuckles candies. Do you know Chuckles, Michael?
No, I don't.
Those little jelly
West
candy.
Coast guy.
Well, they're from Chicago, so I don't necessarily know that they're East Coast, and I've seen them in Ace Hardware out here, but well,
that's good. I'll have to look them up.
Yeah, or just when you come up here to teach in June, there's now a 24-pack at my house of the candy bars. But speaking to your point, Trinity and I were talking about memories, and she said to me, and Trinity's my 18-year-old daughter, she said to me, Dad, I'm not old enough to be nostalgic about food yet like you are. When I'm that old, I'll probably have something that I remember, but at the moment, I don't have anything. And I was like, oh. And so we looked up Chuckles on Amazon. You could buy one bar. You know, it has 5 different little candies in it. You know, you could buy 24 bars, or you could buy, I think it was 12 24s or something like that. You could buy 12 boxes of the 24 in a box. And I bought the 24, and Trinity said to me, I'm surprised you didn't buy the whole case, Dad. So, but anyway, it does speak
so what
to...
what do Chuckles candies mean to you?
I remember, particularly my father liked fruit-flavored candies. And whenever he wasn't supposed to be eating them, they would be under the seat of his car, a bag of like spearmint leaves or a bag of orange slices or whatever, those little jelly candies. And he used to buy chuckles. They used to be bigger, and you could get a double pack, like 10 of them. And they were almost a full 40% bigger than they are now back in the day. And there was a licorice one and a lime one and a lemon one, a cherry one, and an orange one.
Wow.
And I remember going to movie theaters,
So
we would buy them before we went.
Well, that's the connection. For us, I had a uncle who did a lot of traveling, in the 60s. And he'd visit so often. He's a medical physiologist who was doing research all over the world on calcium and magnesium flux within the sarcomere of muscle. And but he would travel all over the world, and if he ever came to visit, he would bring Toblerone bars before you could get them in the United States. And so they were always from Europe. And so early memories are when it was a time for a great visit, or you're returning from a trip, you should pick up Toblerone bars and present them. So Toblerone bars have that same kind of emotional taste memory component. And so there you go.
Yeah. I think we discussed this a lot during our, and we had a great guided imagery on this by Courtney Suter during our Saturday 90 minutes of authoring, Uncovering Certainty and Rediscovering Soul, which is on here on Facebook or also at YouTube if you all want to watch it. But, it's really fascinating, Michael, the connection about food and how, for the most part, with the exception of a few memories like this, how much of our eating is disconnected from what food actually is.
No, it seems to be true. And when we eat it in isolation, and how often I'm as guilty as anybody else. I'm 3/4 of the way through a very rapidly harvested meal. And I suddenly have slowed down long enough to realize that I am tasting something, or, wow, it's 3/4 of the way through and I haven't tasted it. And how the ceremony of meal, the beginning and the end of meal, can help encapsulate that. Some people start with a meal with the tradition of a prayer. Nobody starts eating before everybody sits down. And we've shifted to the very grab as you can, eat when you can, eat while you drive. What is immediate and fueling versus what is mindful eating, contemplation, pausing and acknowledging all the different people and all the different steps to get that item you're about to eat to nourish you, or poison you. But nourish you. And and boy, the mindfulness component is something that we all get. The simple thing of putting something in my mouth and setting the fork down slows things down, allows conversation to happen, and allows you to actually taste and quiet. And we're all steps that we get to go back to.
Absolutely. When you think about it, that point of slowing down in pre-meal rituals, as you were talking about that, and was even, and it was before you made your comment about the food nourishing you or poisoning you. I was thinking about one of the pre-food rituals for, the aristocracy and for leaders at one point in time was, hey, Charlie, you eat some of this first, okay? Let's see what happens to you. And, what was the name of the little boy in the commercial? There was that commercial too about Mikey. Hey, Mikey.
Mikey will eat anything.
Eat anything, right? He won't eat anything.
You think you think I've ever heard that? Hey, Mikey, he'll eat anything. Yes.
So, that was a component. People were, by necessity, more mindful. If we talk about using spices to heighten the kind of experience of the foods that we eat and to add variety. And, in medieval times, they used spice to kind of cover up the flavor of rotting food. And interesting, probably without knowing it, to treat their microbiome disorders.
No, yeah, it's very interesting to reflect on the spice wars and the power of horticulture being able to grow spices in the northern climates once you got glassed protected environments, so you could grow peppers, and so you could grow some of the great spices and preservative spices that the spice wars went on for almost 300 years.
Yeah. It's fascinating, to think about medieval times that was the reason behind roasted meat frequently being put in a sauce after it was roasted, was because it covered up the fact that, it wasn't so good for you. And go ahead. You were about to say something.
Yeah, think about those sauces, those chutneys, and what are the health protective or promoting components of those chutneys and those sauces. You often, depending on where you are, whether it's East Asian or Latin American or the different or Africa, West Africa, South Africa, the spices are exquisite that are incorporated in ethnic chutneys, but almost all the chutney or sauce ingredients have a component that's anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, cardiovascular health promoting, and helps with our antioxidant stress. So, and now we've taken those spices and we've encapsulated them, and that's part of your American ritual of capsules before and after you eat. Maybe we need to go back to chutneys.
Yeah. Well, funny story, when I was in high school, the youth minister, she had just returned from a year with Vista, which was the kind of old Peace Corps for at home. And she had been in the American Southwest with an Indian tribe in a village where they had no refrigeration. And she had lived there for a year and had not once gotten sick, and developed a pretty strong gut over time to the spices that they used, all the peppers that they used, all the things that they used. And she had been back for about 3 weeks, and she was missing the cuisine. And, at least in Northern Virginia in the 70s, it was hard to find Mexican food. I remember in high school in 1976, our Spanish class went out for Mexican food because it was the first Mexican restaurant in Alexandria. And we went out. But right around that time, I guess the year before that, Gail had returned from the Southwest, and she went to a Jack in the Box and got tacos one night and had tacos that theoretically should have been refrigerated and theoretically should have been fine. And she had food poisoning for 4 days.
Yeah, know the food and know how through time the ethnic prepared the food, and we would be a lot better off, you know?
Right. And 1 month out of being out of that more basic subsistence hunter-gatherer diet at that point in time of the Indians in the Southwest, her microbiome had probably lost some of its ability to protect her as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, that protection, the spices, think about, you know, it's interesting, you know, when you're on a plane and you eat food, the humidity is a lot lower in the plane and it doesn't taste the same. Or we know that if you are sitting down to fish or clams and there's a soundtrack of waves breaking, the tastes are more intense and more memorable. If you and what about the mouthfeel? You know, our mouthfeel, we've all been there. The difference between a mouthfeel of fat versus mouthfeel of something that doesn't have any fat in it at all, or something that is dry and it has enough hydration, or not enough hydration, and something is moist, or the temperature changes it. You know, all those different experiences are really receptor driven, whether it's taste or smell taste receptors, or even temperature receptors in the mouth. And so, you know, the mindful aspect of eating and the connection between even just placing it in your mouth and keeping it there more than a microsecond,
right,
can really change the communication between that food and ourselves.
It does, and it changes our experience of it. And I think, you know, as you pointed out already during this conversation, if you think about food, it didn't magically appear in your refrigerator. You know, sunlight,
Right.
earth, water, coming from nature, being applied by intentional, meaningful people who are trying to raise it, the farmers, the person who owns the land, you know, the person who may not, you know, be the farmer, but may just be the person who picks it, the farmhand. In some cases, you know, perhaps they're sharecroppers. In other cases, you know, they may be very indigent people struggling and working hard days for us to get the food. And, you know, some of the stuff about chocolate coming out of India, not India, but Western Africa, I guess, or Eastern Africa. It's chocolate Eastern Africa, right? Some of
Well, both. There's a lot of chocolate comes from Nigeria.
okay. So the way that people are treated in terms of some of the places where children grow the chocolate and such like, but you know, someone is doing something. There's a farmer involved, whether it's, you know, an organic farmer working for a co-op here in the United States, where they may kind of be on the top of the chain in terms of individual farmers getting a decent return, to the person who's struggling in subsistence farming and not getting much return for all their hard labor. But there's someone giving a portion of their life's energy to get your food, and it's picked and then it's processed, you know, whether it's flash frozen fish at some canning ship, or whether it's, you know, broccoli that's cleaned and steamed at a local factory, processed and then frozen, you know, or whether it's trucked to get to us fresh and picked before it's fresh. And, you know, the whole issues there with histamines and the such like, And, but someone again contributing, someone driving the trucks, someone, taking care of the truck fleet, someone taking care of the factories, the food's going to a distributor, from the distributor getting to the food store, the bravery of the people who stood at the cash registers during the epidemic, when there was no protection and, no plexiglass screens and not enough masks, and they stayed at their jobs to, out of their commitment that you'd have food for your table, right on through, kitchen workers and waiters and restaurant owners who've had their challenges, or the people in your own home who do the shopping and the cooking, or who washes the dishes. We're connected to every one of those people when we eat, whether we do it mindfully.
Absolutely true. And I'm connected to somebody who just rang my doorbell. Let me get that. You carry on.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
All right. So, it's an interesting piece, right? Because, it brings up a part of food that we often don't think about. We've reduced food to nutrition, and often that's just about calories. We don't do enough thinking about, does it have the micronutrients? Does it have the trace elements? Does it have the right omega-3 content? Is it going to help me by having, the right carbohydrates, the right proteins? What do I need? Is it a complete protein? Does it have the right phytonutrients? So, food is calories and nutrition. Food is information in terms of the phytonutrients. Food can be medicine in terms of its impact. As Dr. Stone mentioned, the botanicals that were part of certain cuisines, the Indian cuisine, for example, the Middle Eastern cuisines, some of the early cuisines, foods served therapeutic purposes. When we eat broccoli, we've talked in previous sessions how the cruciferous vegetables, the brassica vegetables, make a difference in our metabolism, our detoxification. So they provide information that drive processes in our bodies. And, and food ultimately is about connection.
Oh, boy, isn't that true? That's also eloquently said. My reflections when I pick crops, the reflection on how, I was able to spend time with some UPIC individuals whose belief and respect for the animals is such that this animal that knows its environment better than we as humans ever will allowed itself to be caught for us, to nourish us and our family. So there is such reverence of that and how they handle, whether it's salmon or halibut, or whether it's a caribou, or whether it's moose, how they handle the animal that allowed itself to get caught, and how it's spread to other members in their community, because it is a gift that has been given, so they freely give. And I think I think the mindful component is exactly what you said. From where did it come to nourish me? And one last little thing. Even yesterday, a 7-year-old grandson came by, and Leslie, they were outside, and Leslie heard the hen was in the process of laying an egg, and so she had him go over and open the laying hutch, and the hen stood, and he picked up the egg, and he realized that it was warm. And it was that amazement that this was a warm egg, where it came from. And so when he went home, a couple hours later, he went with a dozen eggs, and this was the connection to food and where it came from. And it's how do we encourage that connection, even to help us realize that we're part of the bigger component. And it's a little hard when you're going through a fast food drive-through and get a prepackaged whatever or wrapped in styrofoam to really sense that connection to its beginnings, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's been one of the reported benefits of our pandemic isolation is that families have been at home and have had a little bit more of a chance to eat together and share their meals together. And, it's a drawback that, as things are changing, we're going back to our old behaviors. I don't know if you've had many experiences with family style eating, like in restaurants in your life, but there was a place called Graves Mountain Lodge back in Virginia. And I went there for the first time, like when I was in high school, and we went in on a Friday night, and it was Graves Mountain Lodge is between, it's like west of Krieglersville, kind of southwest of Little Washington, or more south of Little Washington, north of Madison, near a little town called Syria, way out off of 231. It just about borders up to the Shenandoah National Park. And they just seated everybody at long trestle tables. And it wasn't like they seated you with separation. If there were 4 people, they put you in the 4 seats right next to them. If it was 5 people, you sat down across from one of those other people, and you just filled in. And with the exception of your entree, which you got to say whether you wanted one or the other or half of each, everything else just kept coming to the table in big bowls, in big platters, and all the side dishes, and there must have been 10, 12 different side dishes. And the platter just worked its way up and down the table, and you had to ask for it. And when there was only about a third left in the platter, they took it back, put it on top of the next platter, but they had already brought out the next platter. So it was the next platter that was coming out on. But, just amazing food, and a real opportunity to meet all different kinds of people. It was like my first real experience meeting people who, didn't go to the same sort of church I did, or didn't go to the same sort of privileged school that I went to. These were people who were farmers, and they worked in the mountains and, lived a different lifestyle. But when it came to sharing a meal, everybody talked to everybody. Like, you didn't ignore the person who was sitting across from you. You could well end up in conversation with their family instead of being in conversation with the people you were with.
No, that's exactly true. And that is what fosters and builds community. And I hope during this awakening or this re-entry, as our society begins to wake up and begin to mingle, I hope the mingling can be done in a way that there's not a lot of fear, but there's more of that truly mingling. It's one of the great experiences of living in a town of around 2,000 people, 60 miles from the closest stoplight for 7 years in St. Mary's, North Idaho, where there was pie and soup night, and all the proceeds went to help somebody in need. And so everybody from the town came in, and you'd sat just like that, and they'd bring a pie, and if you wanted a piece of berry pie, or they'd go through with another pie, and everyone was sitting and talking and interacting, and the people who took a shower after work were mixing with the people that took a shower before work, right? And so the laborers were mixing with the business folks and the educators and all that, and the laborers ended up educating the educators and vice versa. So let's go back to that. Let's connect with learn more about our food and the things that it triggers within us. And we're going to be talking more about that at Harmony Hill and also at Feathered Pipe in Montana. Enjoy.
Right. And Michael, I know you need to run, but I am going to fill in the details for that. So Harmony Hill is coming up on the 11th of June. We're about halfway to our full attendance there. So registering would be great. There are 5 partial scholarships for Harmony Hill to help people who may be economically challenged. At Feathered Pipe, we're going all in. We really want people to show up. We want that community of people doing work, learning about themselves, learning about their health, taking the journey, through illness and disease to wellness, and getting the opportunity to do it. So at Feathered Pipe, we're giving 12 full scholarships. 4 of them are now spoken for, and in case you're one of the attendees who had already registered and you haven't heard, you're getting a scholarship. And it reminds me I need to reach out to them, but you're getting a full scholarship as well. We have 8 full scholarships left to give to people. And so we hope that you'll join us. Send an email through Joseph Lamb, MD, through the contact page about why you want one of the scholarships. And we're going to be selecting people. And we hope that people will join us there. This is important work. Connection is important. Moving into the next phases of our life are important. And the Consilience Partnership, Michael Stone, myself, Monique Klass, Courtney Suter, Susan Buell, and Lyra Heller are all committed to making our teaching programs this summer pretty remarkable. So I hope you'll join us. And sorry, Michael, that we went over time.
It's all right. Thanks. See you next Monday.
Bye, everybody.